Not a Russian missile attack, but a controlled explosion in a Ukrainian mine for graphite, a mineral used in lithium-ion batteries and nuclear reactors. Ukraine also has titanium used in the aerospace industry. But the draft deal doesn't surrender control over Ukraine's mineral resources to the US, as President Trump initially demanded. Rather, it's an attempt to ensure that both countries benefit. Today, President Zelenskyy was posing with a map of Ukraine's mineral resources. For him, the key is that any deal should include US security guarantees. It's not yet clear whether it does.
This deal could be a great success, or it could quietly pass. The big success depends on our conversation with President Trump.
Here in Washington, President Trump made an announcement at the start of his first cabinet meeting.
President Zelenskyy is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement.
But he didn't make a future commitment to Ukraine's security.
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that because it's in, we're talking about Europe as their next door neighbor.
And he seemed unaware that while Ukraine has many critical minerals, it doesn't have much in the way of rare earths.
We very much need rare earth. They have great rare earth. It brings us great wealth. We get back the money that we spent, and we hope that we're going to be able to settle this up.
In fact, the US extracts rare earths, elements essential for new green technologies such as wind turbines, from a mine at Mountain Pass in California. The problem is that 90% of rare earths are processed in China, even when mined in the US. The bottleneck isn't finding more rare earth deposits. It's China's domination of processing, and the Ukraine deal isn't going to solve that. President Putin, today meeting the president of Guinea-Bissau, may be less happy. On Monday, coincidentally, he was telling his officials that Russia has far more rare earths than Ukraine, and America would be welcome to exploit them. In Kyiv, a few people were protesting against the deal. They fear that President Trump wants to loot their country's mineral resources. As Ukrainians say, the only free cheese is in the mousetrap.
Well, Lindsay, Keir Starmer is on his way to Washington now. How's all this going to play into his visit?
I think it's going to be quite complicated. President Macron of France was here earlier in the week. He and the Prime Minister have said they'd be willing to provide peacekeeping forces for Ukraine. But Foreign Minister Lavrov of Russia again today said there is absolutely no way that they would accept peacekeeping forces from any NATO country. That is out. And yet here we have President Trump saying, well, the Americans aren't going to provide any security guarantees. That's up to Europe. And yet all of this is putting the cart before the horse. There is no peace deal. There are not even any negotiations yet. Tomorrow in Istanbul, there will be discussions between the Americans and the Russians, but just about re-establishing proper diplomatic relations. They say nothing about Ukraine at all. So all of this stuff about the mineral resources and about the peacekeeping forces, it's all way in the future. What Prime Minister Starmer is going to have to do is try and persuade President Trump that there has to be a serious negotiation that doesn't give Russia all that it wants.
Lindsay Hilson in Washington. Well, joining me now is the Ukrainian MP and leader of the Holos Party, Kira Rudik. A week ago, Ukrainians were talking about how betrayed they felt by Donald Trump. Is that still how you feel?
Hello, Christian. Thank you so much for having me. Well, we feel actually very, very confused because President Trump is operating under the unconfirmed illusion that Putin wants peace. We did not see any fact that would support that in our last week or any time before. We are attacked every single night in our peaceful cities. The fighting at the front line continues. And for some reason, there are discussions about rare minerals, which is a very far-fetched shot while Europe holds 300 billion of Russian assets that can be much easily taken and used if there is a need for it.
So what is President Zelensky up to, going to Washington on Friday to sign a deal that, as you say, seems, well, it kind of seems not worth the paper it's not written on?
Well, it seems that President Trump is trying to deliver on some of the promises that he made to the American people. And for that, he needs to have a deal that he can announce. But the way that we have seen this deal is just like a framework. It's not clear that is it a deal about the past or is it a deal about the future? And if there is any more details there, it will have to get into the Ukrainian parliament and be ratified by the parliament. So we will have to know all the details. So right now, it is very hard to see how the deal that's being signed is going to lead us into having the ceasefire or peace deal, because it's not linked at all.
So if Zelensky goes ahead and signs something, which you say he can't do because it needs to be ratified by the Ukrainian parliament, I mean, is he risking his own presidency by doing this?
No, he will sign the framework that he is allowed to. But if he would want to go into details, like, again, really deferring some of Ukraine's rare minerals, really changing the budgeting, really changing the taxes codexes in Ukraine and all kinds of bills, because we are not talking about like just one piece of paper. We are talking about like massive collaboration between the countries, the governments with the funds that will require pretty tectonic changes in Ukrainian legislation. So it's not as quick as going on the TV show and announcing it. It's a long-term legislative work that we'll have to do, and we will do if there is a need to. But again, right now, we do not have the details for it. We do not understand how it brings peace to our country. And most of all, we do not understand how is it that we have to give rare minerals to the United States, but Europe is responsible for our security.
Right. Well, what do you make of the other side of this conversation, in which Britain and France are talking about peacekeepers, and Russia is saying, forget it. You know, there's no way they will accept that as part of any peace.
I believe that Russia is saying that, and I believe that as of right now, there is not a clear understanding that we have seen from any leader just yet of how to make Russia stop. Again, what we have heard that Russia wants to end the war is something that President Trump said that we were not able to confirm by any facts on the ground. So for us, things don't change. We have to fight at the front line. We have to try to save our lives during attacks, and we have to continue to operate as the country. And everything else right now has no influence on Putin's actions. And we appreciate what Keir Starmer and President Macron are doing. We really appreciate that. But it needs to be a complex solution that is just not there yet.
Kira Rudik, thank you very much indeed. Kathy.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.